The alien city of Orion Prime looked peaceful from far away, with its tall, shining towers and floating lights that danced between the streets. But inside the city, life was not peaceful for everyone. Hidden between the giant buildings was a small old diner named Starline Corner, a place where tired workers came for warm food and quiet moments. And in this diner worked a young alien waitress named Lyra. Lyra was gentle. She always smiled at customers, even when her legs hurt from standing all day. But those who looked closely could see something heavy behind her smile. Her eyes carried worry, like she was fighting a battle nobody else could see. She lived alone. She supported her sick mother at home. And she never argued with anyone, because she could not afford to lose her job. That day started like any other. Lyra cleaned tables, served drinks, and tried her best to stay calm. But deep down she felt a strange fear, as if something bad was coming. She could not explain it. She only felt it. Then the diner door opened with a loud noise. 3 wealthy alien nobles walked inside. They were known across the city for their power and arrogance. Their clothes were bright gold and silver. Their voices were sharp and full of pride. And everyone in the diner went silent when they entered. Nobody wanted trouble with them. Lyra forced a polite smile and walked to their table. "Welcome to Starline Corner. What would you like today?" she asked softly. The nobles did not smile back. Instead, they gave each other cruel looks, as if they were about to enjoy something unpleasant. One of them, the tallest, pointed at Lyra and said loudly, "Look at her. Slow, weak. Not even worth serving us." People in the diner turned their faces away. They pretended not to hear. Nobody wanted to defend her. Bullying was common, and the nobles had connections in the government. Anyone who interfered usually ended up in trouble. Lyra lowered her head. "I will do my best," she whispered. The second noble laughed and threw his empty glass on the floor. "Clean it," he ordered. "Use your hands." Lyra knelt down slowly. Her hands shook. She felt her eyes getting wet, but kept her head down. She could not fight back. She could not lose this job. She had no choice. Then something unexpected happened. The diner door opened again. A human walked in. His name was Daniel, though nobody knew him here. He wore simple clothes and carried a small bag on his shoulder. He looked tired but calm. Humans rarely visited Orion Prime, and everyone stared at him with quiet fear. Humans had a strong history. They were brave, dangerous when needed, and full of stories that other species called legends. Daniel stood near the entrance for a moment. He watched the nobles. He watched Lyra kneeling. His eyes slowly changed from calm to sharp, but his face stayed still. Something inside him reacted. Something buried deep in his past. He walked toward the counter, pretending to order food. But his focus never left Lyra. It was as if he saw her pain more clearly than anyone else in the room. Lyra finished cleaning and returned to the table. She placed the bill gently. "Here is your total," she said, trying to avoid eye contact. The nobles burst into laughter. "Total? You think we pay?" One of them shouted. He picked up the menu and threw it at her face. The diner went silent again. Not a single alien moved. Everyone watched, afraid. Everyone knew Lyra was being bullied. Everyone knew it was unfair. But they also knew they were too afraid to stand up. Except one person. Daniel slowly stood from his seat. His steps were quiet, calm, controlled, but his presence felt heavy. Like something powerful was waking up, he walked toward Lyra and stood beside her. The nobles stared at him with surprise. A human had stepped forward. Daniel did not speak loudly. He simply said, "Your bill." "And theirs?" "I will pay." The entire diner froze. A human paying for alien nobles? This was unheard of. Lyra looked up at him with wide eyes. "Why?" she whispered. Daniel did not answer. He only gave a small, gentle smile. a smile full of sadness, as if he was carrying a memory that still hurt him. The nobles were shocked at first. Then their shock turned into rage. "How dare you insult us?" they shouted. "A human thinks he can protect her?" Daniel stood still, his face calm. But the air around him felt tense, strong, dangerous. Customers began recording. Everybody sensed something big was about to happen. The nobles rose from their seats. Their expressions darkened. The tallest one stepped close to Daniel and whispered, "You will regret this, human." But Daniel did not step back. He did not lower his eyes. He only said one quiet sentence, "No one should cry alone." And with that simple line, the whole galaxy's fate began to shift. The diner felt different now. What had started as quiet bullying was turning into something dangerous. The three wealthy aliens stared at Daniel like he had committed a crime. In their minds, a human standing up for a low-class waitress was not bravery. It was an insult to their pride. Lyra felt her breath stop. No one had ever defended her before. She wanted to thank Daniel, but she also feared what would happen next. The nobles were powerful. They had influence, and they were cruel when embarrassed. Daniel placed the payment card on the table. "For her, and for you," he repeated calmly. He spoke like someone who had already accepted the consequences. The tallest noble slammed his fist on the table. "You think we need your money?" he shouted. His voice echoed through the diner, making cups shake. Daniel did not respond. He simply stood there, protecting Lyra with his presence. The second noble leaned back in his chair and smirked. "So this is what humans do now? Play hero in cheap diners?" He snapped his fingers. "Look at him. Weak body, no allies, no status." Daniel's face remained calm, but inside him a storm was forming. Every insult reminded him of something painful, a memory he tried not to think about. A failure. A moment long ago when he could not save someone he loved. The nobles sensed he was emotional, but they mistook it for fear. They stood up slowly, surrounding him. Their bright clothing shimmered like armor. Their voices dropped to low, threatening tones. "You disrespected us," the tallest noble said. "You embarrassed us in public." Daniel looked around. Everyone in the diner was watching. Some whispered, "He should run." Others whispered, "A human won't run." Daniel turned slightly toward Lyra. "Stay behind me," he said softly. His voice was warm, steady, and it made Lyra feel safe for the first time that day. But the nobles grew more furious. "Behind you?" One of them laughed. "You think you can protect her? Protect anyone?" Daniel swallowed hard. Those words struck something deep in his heart. He had once failed to protect someone, a little girl during a disaster on another world. Since that day, he carried guilt everywhere he went. Lyra saw something change in his eyes. Not fear, not anger. Something quiet, like acceptance. The nobles pushed Daniel slightly, testing him. He did not move. He did not raise his hands to fight. "That is enough," Daniel said calmly. His tone was not loud, but it carried weight. A tone of someone ready to endure whatever came next. The nobles began to provoke him even more. They threatened to call the city guards, to accuse him of violence, to ruin his life. Daniel finally spoke. "If you want to punish someone, punish me," he said. "But let her go." Lyra felt tears rising again. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Daniel did not look back at her, but his voice softened. No one should suffer alone. The nobles did not care about his words. They cared only about their image, and now, a human making them look weak was unacceptable. The tallest noble stepped very close to Daniel's face. "You will regret stepping into this," he growled. "We are nobles. We rule this district. You are nothing." Daniel finally met his eyes. "I am not trying to rule anything," he said. "I am only trying to be human." For the first time, A short silence fell in the diner. Daniel's words carried a strange power, a calm truth. People recording the scene felt the weight of it. Some even lowered their cameras, confused by the humans' quiet bravery. But the nobles were done talking. They grabbed Daniel's arm and tried to drag him outside. They wanted a public scene. They wanted to show the city that nobles could crush anyone who challenged them. Daniel pulled his arm free, not violently, not aggressively, just enough to stand his ground. "You do not want to do this," Daniel warned quietly. His voice was not threatening, it was sad, as if he hoped they would stop before things became worse. But the nobles only smirked. They believed humans were strong physically, but weak socially. They believed no one would defend him, and at that moment, they were right. All the customers stayed in their seats. All the workers hid behind tables. No one stepped forward. Only Lyra stood near Daniel, shaking. Daniel slowly stepped in front of her again, his body forming a shield between her and danger. He whispered without turning his head. "You will be okay." The nobles laughed loudly. "We will see who is okay," they said. Then they moved toward him with full intention to hurt him, and the rising conflict had just become a war Daniel could not walk away from. The diner grew colder, even though nothing changed in the room. It was the feeling, the heavy tension that came when danger filled the air. The three nobles stepped closer to Daniel, their shadows stretching across the floor like dark claws. They were not used to resistance. They were used to fear, silence, and obedience. But Daniel did not give them any of those things. Lyra stood behind him, gripping her apron with shaking hands. She wanted to scream for help, but she knew no one would come. The customers avoided looking at her. Some pretended to eat. Others kept recording, hoping for drama, but unwilling to step in. Daniel understood the truth. He was alone, and yet he did not move. The tallest noble raised his hand and shoved Daniel hard. The force pushed Daniel's back against the counter, but he stayed on his feet. His face tightened in pain, but he did not strike back. He couldn't. He wasn't here to win a fight. He was here to protect Lyra. "Fight back, human!" The second noble shouted, but Daniel stayed silent. His breathing was slow, controlled, like he was containing a storm inside himself. The nobles were confused. Why wasn't he resisting? Did he think he was stronger than them? Or was he simply foolish? Lyra watched Daniel carefully. She saw something the nobles could not see. Not weakness, but restraint. Daniel could fight. She could feel it in the way he stood, in the way his muscles tightened like coiled ropes. He was choosing not to hurt anyone, even though he was the one being threatened. Another shove hit Daniel's shoulder. This time he stumbled. The recording devices captured everything. People whispered, "Why is he not defending himself? He could win if he tried. Humans are strong. Isn't he strong?" But Daniel's strength was not in hitting back. It was in holding himself together. The third noble leaned in close. "What is wrong, human? Lost your courage?" Daniel finally answered. "My courage is not the problem," he said. "My problem is I know what happens when I lose control." The nobles didn't understand. But Lyra did. Her eyes widened as she realized Daniel carried a dark memory. A memory of someone he once failed to save. He was afraid. Not of the nobles, but of himself. The tallest noble grabbed Daniel by the front of his shirt. "You embarrassed us in front of weak workers. You insulted us by paying our bill. Now you will kneel and beg." Daniel did not kneel. He did not blink. Instead, he whispered, "I will not kneel for cruelty." His words spread through the diner like a spark. People stopped eating, stopped breathing. A few customers lowered their recording devices out of respect. Something important was happening, something larger than a simple argument. The nobles grew angrier. They attacked him again, this time with more force. A blow struck Daniel's face, Another hit his ribs. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. Lyra stepped forward, her courage shaking, but real. "Please stop," she cried, but the nobles ignored her completely. The second noble snapped his fingers. "Guards will arrest you, human. We will say you attacked us first." Daniel exhaled slowly. He knew it was true. The law favored the wealthy here, but still. He didn't run. He didn't argue. He didn't break. Instead, he took one small step forward. He placed himself directly between Lyra and the nobles. Every movement he made was quiet, gentle, protective, like he was shielding something fragile from a storm. Lyra whispered, "You will get hurt." Daniel did not turn around. "I have been hurt before," he replied softly. "But you should not be," the nobles shouted in frustration. "Enough of this hero act." The tallest noble lunged forward and pushed Daniel with full force. Daniel crashed into a table, plates shattering around him. People gasped, but Daniel rose again, slowly, painfully. Yet he rose. Something changed in the room when he stood back up. Not in the nobles, not in the customers, but in Daniel himself. He looked at Lyra, not with fear, but with apology, like he was sorry she had to witness this. Then he turned back to the nobles. His voice was steady. "If you want to hurt someone, hurt me. But leave her alone." It was the first moment the nobles hesitated. His calmness unsettled them. His silence was scarier than anger. One thing became clear. Daniel was willing to face whatever came next, not because he was strong, but because he refused to let another innocent person suffer on his watch. For the first time, the nobles felt uncertain. And for the first time, Lyra felt hope. The turning point had arrived, and nothing in the diner or the galaxy would ever be the same again. The atmosphere inside the diner was heavy now, heavier than before, heavier than anything the customers had expected when they came here for lunch. The bullying had turned into violence, and the violence was turning into something far more serious. Daniel stood in front of Lyra again, breathing slowly, holding his injured ribs with one hand. Blood ran from his lip. His shirt was torn. But he did not step back. The nobles were shocked that a human still stood. A weaker person would have crawled away. A wiser person might have apologized to escape punishment. But Daniel was different. He stood because he refused to let anyone else be harmed. The tallest noble growled in anger. "This ends now," he shouted. He stepped forward and struck Daniel across the face, sending him crashing into a table again. Plates flew. A cup rolled onto the floor. Several customers gasped, but none moved to help. Lyra ran to Daniel, kneeling beside him. "Please stop. You will die," she cried, tears sliding down her cheeks. Daniel lifted his hand slowly, not to fight, but to calm her. His voice was weak but gentle. "I'm okay. I'm okay." But he wasn't. His breathing was shaky. His vision blurred. His body begged him to lie down and stop. Yet he rose again. It was not strength that lifted him. It was guilt, the weight of a memory he carried like a wound in his heart. He remembered a young girl, someone he once promised to protect during an attack years ago. She had looked at him with trust, just like Lyra did now. But he failed her. She died in his arms. And from that day, Daniel lived with a simple vow: never again. Now, looking into Lyra's frightened eyes, he saw that same helpless look. He would not fail this time. Even if it cost him everything, Daniel wiped the blood from his mouth and stepped forward. "You hurt me fine," he said quietly, "but do not touch her." The nobles were furious. How could a human, bleeding and alone, still challenge them? Their pride felt attacked. Their authority felt threatened. The second noble raised his arm, powering a small electric baton, a weapon meant for discipline. The diner gasped. That weapon was not meant for casual use, let alone on a human. Lyra screamed, "No!" Please don't. Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment he feared would come, but he also knew this was the moment he had been preparing for, ever since the day he lost that little girl. The baton struck him across the chest. A sharp flash of light filled the diner. Daniel's body convulsed from the shock. He fell to his knees, gripping the floor. His muscles trembling uncontrollably, Lyra fell to her knees beside him. Tears dripped onto the floor as she held his arm. "Daniel, please get up." Please. But Daniel could barely hear her. His ears rang. His heartbeat pounded unevenly. His vision flickered like a dying light. The nobles watched him with cold satisfaction. "This is the price of disrespect," they said. "This is what happens when humans forget their place." Daniel forced himself to look at Lyra one last time. She was crying openly now. Not for herself, but for him. And in that moment, Daniel's final strength rose, not from anger, but from love for a stranger he barely knew. He whispered, "You are safe." "That's enough." Then he turned to the nobles and spoke with surprising calm. "You think I lost?" "But I didn't." The tallest noble frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel smiled weakly, a smile full of truth. "You didn't break me? You only showed the galaxy who you really are." At that moment, the diner doors burst open. City guards rushed in, dozens of them. They had seen the recordings spreading on the local network. They saw the nobles attacking an unarmed human who paid their bill. They saw cruelty, and now justice had arrived. The nobles tried to explain, "He attacked us first. We were defending ourselves." But the video from 20 customers showed the truth. They had bullied Lyra. They had beaten Daniel. They had abused their power. The guards restrained them while they shouted and protested. But the fight was over. Lyra held Daniel's head gently as his breathing grew faint. His eyes were half closed. Still, he looked peaceful, like he had finally done what he could not do years ago. He had saved someone. With her voice shaking, Lyra whispered, "Why did you do all this? You didn't even know me." Daniel's final smile was soft and tired. "No one should cry alone," he whispered. Then his eyes slowly closed. His hand slipped from hers, and Daniel, the human who stood for kindness even when the world stood against him, gave his final breath. The diner fell silent. But his sacrifice had already changed everything. The diner was quiet in a way no one had ever felt before. The noise, the anger, the shouting, all of it had faded. Only one thing remained, the memory of a human who stood alone and refused to let cruelty win. Lyra stayed beside Daniel, her hands shaking as she held him. The city guards surrounded the scene. Some guards looked at Daniel with shock. Others looked with respect. They had never seen such bravery in Orion Prime, and especially not from a human. Daniel's body was lifted gently and taken away, but his presence did not leave the room. It stayed in the hearts of everyone who witnessed his sacrifice. The nobles, once feared across the district, now sat in restraints, their faces pale, their pride broken, their future uncertain. The head guard stepped toward Lyra. "We saw everything," he said softly. "The whole city saw it, because by now, the recording of Daniel standing up to the nobles had spread everywhere, across Orion Prime, across nearby colonies, and even reaching human worlds within hours. Millions watched as a lone human protected a waitress with nothing but courage. People on every planet asked the same question. Who was he? Lyra knew the answer before anyone else could speak it. "He was someone who didn't want anyone to cry alone," she whispered. "The city reacts." The next day, crowds gathered outside Starline Corner. Aliens from all ranks, workers, students, shop owners, came to place flowers, candles, and small glowing stones outside the diner. Some left notes. "Thank you, human. You protected someone we were too afraid to defend. You showed us what courage looks like." The government held an emergency meeting. The attack on Daniel had caused outrage across multiple planets. Other alien species demanded justice. Humans demanded answers. Everyone wanted change, for the first time in years. The nobles' power was challenged. Their influence was questioned, their corruption exposed. The three nobles were charged with assault, abuse of power, and discrimination. They would face a real trial, something they believed could never happen to them. Daniel's sacrifice had broken the silence that protected them for years. Lyra's promised Lyra visited Daniel's memorial every morning before her shift. She brought fresh flowers. She sat quietly and talked to him, even though he was gone. She told him about her mother's health improving. She told him how the diner felt safer now. She told him the city guards assigned protection for all low-rank workers. She whispered, "You changed my life. You saved me. I will never forget you." And every time she left, she repeated his final words. No one should cry alone. A change across the galaxy within weeks. New laws were passed on Orion Prime. Workers could not be bullied or threatened by higher classes. Customers who mistreated service workers faced heavy punishment. Humans were granted equal protection rights in noble districts. But the biggest change came from the people themselves. Stories of Daniel were told in schools, shared on networks, passed from traveler to traveler across space. They called him the Quiet Shield, a human who stood without weapons, without backup, without fear. And galaxies far away, places where humans were misunderstood or feared, began to see them differently. Not as warriors, not as invaders, but as protectors. As beings who valued kindness, even when it cost them everything. Daniel, an ordinary human, had become a symbol of hope. The final scene one evening, months later, Lyra sat outside the diner after closing. The city lights glowed softly. A gentle breeze moved through the streets. She looked up at the stars, the same stars Daniel once walked under. She smiled and whispered, "I'm not alone anymore." "You changed that." A young worker approached her. "Miss Lyra, why do people remember him so much?" Lyra looked at the sky again, her eyes warm. "Because," she said softly, "he showed us something simple, something we forgot. Courage is not power. Courage is choosing kindness, even when the world tells you to walk away," the worker nodded. And for a moment, the stars seemed brighter, as if the universe itself remembered Daniel too. The story of the human who paid the ultimate price continued to shape worlds, continued to inspire hearts, continued to remind every species, powerful or weak, that one act of bravery can change a galaxy. This was Daniel's legacy, and it lived on forever, in every world touched by his sacrifice.